Can you go through like a quick rundown of your like a Reader's Digest version of your process, how you get from concept to finished page?
Okay, so I start off with very, very rough thumbnails. Okay, and then from those thumbnails, I shoot photo reference for all my figures. I will go in and if I have to create models or find 3D models for vehicles or set pieces or whatever, I do that, and that's mainly done in Google SketchUp. So for all of my like interior work, all of my set pieces and everything, that's all done in SketchUp, and I build those sets. Like I'll build the mansions and I'll build whatever it takes to get it that I need. A lot of the vehicles, I'll pull down models off of the Google SketchUp library and whatever. I can use a lot of that stuff, and then and then I use photo reference of whatever else I can. I take that and I collage all that information together, and I create what I call my pencils, basically. So, and that's all done in Photoshop. And I go in and I'll do some drawing and stuff in Photoshop and creating effects and things like explosions and blasts. And like on this page, there's all these sparks flying. There's an explosion down here, and so I do all those effects, in Photoshop. And then once I've got that to where it's ready to ink, I print that out in non-repro blue. And then I just ink straight over that. And
non-repro blue, that's something that any color printer can do, right?
Yeah, it's just a set of color points. So I'm not as sure exactly what the RGB is.
Yeah, what the numbers are.
What the numbers are, but yeah, you can find it online. And so I just set those in, and I make everything that non-repro blue. Now, I mean, really, I can make it red or green or whatever color I want, because non-repro blue is sort of an archaic. It's archaic now. It doesn't really. It has no use. Back in the day, non-repro blue was a color that didn't show up on Xerox scanners.
Totally.
So you could draw non-repro blue, and then you'd scan it in, and like that blue wouldn't show up, but. I mean, scanners nowadays, there's no color that a scanner can't read and
isolate and remove.
Yeah, so the only reason I do that is because the blue is easier to see than like gray. And when I first started doing this, I printed it out like real light gray, but as I was starting to ink over that gray, I would lose the gray. I couldn't see my line anymore. So then I ink straight over that, and I use Pentel pocket brushes, I use sign brushes, I use big fat Sharpies, basically whatever tool gets the mark made that I'm looking for. And then I just scan that shit in and send it off.
Cool.
For me, the artistry is in the inks. I don't need the pencils to be any different for me to get the effect that I'm going for. So, and that's becoming pretty, there's a lot of people working that way now.
Well, even Charles Schultz, he never liked to ink over a finished drawing. He would do maybe a basic layout and then do all just inks for everything.
Yeah.
Because I think he thought inking the pencil line took the life out of the pencil line.
Yeah, because then you're trying to be too slavish to what you already drew once. So
so the stroke can't be naturalistic.
Yeah.
It's imitative at best.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just like I used basically a photograph of this like a jungle scene for the background here, but it's on like a nice calm day, and so now here in the inks, I'm going in and getting all the expression of the blast of this helicopter and the wind blowing, and all of that motion is happening here in the inks, where it didn't exist at all in the reference. So when I was in grad school, it's not really a mentor. We all had to take, in our second year of grad school, we had to take an advisor. The advisor that I found was Donato Giancola, who is a very prolific cover artist, fantasy science fiction book cover artist. At the time, that's what I really wanted to do, was go into book covers. You know, I remember going to his studio in Brooklyn, and you know, I was working on this sort of fantasy portrait. You know, some of the proportions of the figure weren't quite right, and he's looking at it, and he looks at me. He's like, you know, it's okay to trace. And then he started pulling books off the shelf. He was like, Vermeer traced, Hans Holbein traced, like all of the Northern Renaissance painters they traced. They used camera obscura. I mean, it was a very laborious process of tracing where they had to build, you know, like this giant room. But you know, one of the reasons why so many of Vermeer's paintings all take place like in the same room in front of the same window is because that's the room that he had set up next to his camera obscura room. So, and that changed my my whole outlook, because you know, in undergrad, all of my professors were like old school editorial illustrators, and a lot of them, you know, had come up in the 70s and 80s, and for them, you know, it was like tracing was this, you know, 4-letter word. If you did it, you lacked integrity as an illustrator and an artist, and it, you know, it was just this horrible thing. And then our chair of the illustration department passed away, and in his honor, they did this series of lectures by really famous editorial illustrators from, you know, all over the world. And one of the illustrators that came out was this guy named Guy Biot. He was this really amazing illustrator. He does a lot of work for The New Yorker and Time, and you know, really kind of whimsical, kind of tongue-in-cheek, punish kind of work, but very like intricate little tight drawings. And he's this, you know, very, you know, kind of confident French man who just kind of says whatever, you know, he's saying unabashedly. And he was up there on stage talking, and it came to the question phase, and someone was asking him how he, you know, how his process works, and he started referencing this one illustration that he did of this image of Manhattan. It's this big drawing of downtown Manhattan from this sky, and he was basically saying, like, you know, first he got Rolling Stone to charter a helicopter for him to go up, fly over Manhattan, get his reference, and so he told us about that, and then he said, then I go home, and I take the photograph, and I put it on a light box, and I trace it. and there was like a hush came over the auditorium. We looked around. All of our professors were cringing, and they were really uncomfortable at this, you know, just unabashed admission, like, you know, completely shameless admission of such a thing. And in one fell swoop, Guy Biot, like one of the most prolific editorial illustrators of the 90s, had undone, you know, years of work on the part of our professors to instill this you know, false sense of, you know, like artistic integrity. So like for Donato to go through, and he just started talking to him about this, and it's like many of the greatest painters and artists of in history, like they traced, because it was the process is not important. The only thing that's important is the product, which for me I think is sort of indicative of what's become so wrong with fine arts today, is that it's no longer about the product. It's only about the process, and it's about the mind of the artist. That for some reason, the mind of the artist is this like deified thing. It's sacred. Oh, he's so brilliant. He's so clever, and it's like, I could give a shit, you know, how you did something or why you did it. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to be standing there in front of a work of art, and it's going to be up to me to decide what I think of it. And I can give a crap what some pretentious asshole, whatever his bullshit art speak reasons are.